Today we have a question that says in the book of Daniel, does it foretell the fall of the United States? I have to say first and foremost that one of the things that frustrates many scholars today, I'm talking about biblical scholars, people who study the Word of God, is the lack of information about where we stand, the United States stands in prophecy. In fact, and even in the end time events, there's not very much said about it at all. I know today, I don't know exactly where this question comes from. I know who asked it, but I know today that there's a thought that was running around by so-called prophets. They call themselves prophets today, and they begin to speak on President Trump. And in Daniel chapter 8, and you got to understand now before I read this, Daniel chapter 8 has already been completed. It's already been fulfilled, okay? And something important happens in Daniel chapter 8 is the writer of Daniel, he switched from the Greek to the Hebrew. The fact of the matter is, 8 through the rest of the book is written in Hebrew language. Now, I think there's a reason for that, because these chapters deal mainly with Israel, okay? Mainly with God's people and the relation of the world towards them. But in Daniel chapter 8, it talks about the Medes and the Persians, and they rise up and they become dominant. But then in verse 5, something happens. And it says, and as I was considering, Daniel says, behold, a he-goat came from the west on the face of the whole earth, and touched not the ground, and the goat had a notable horn between his eyes. And he came to the ram that had the 2 horns, the Medes and the Persians, the empire, which I have seen standing before the river, and he ran unto them in a fury of his power. And I saw him come close unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, which means with anger and all type of emotion, and smote the ram and brake his 2 horns. And there was no power in the ram to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground, and he stamped upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of the hand. Well, I'm not going to read the whole chapter, but you can do that for yourself. But the idea of these prophets today, they was thinking that Brother Trump was this goat that rose from the west, and he was the one that overran the Medes and the Persian Empire. But folks, I got to tell you something. It was if you read the rest of the chapter, you will find that it was Alexander the Great. Okay, and it's already been done. It's already been fulfilled. So I didn't find anywhere in the book of Daniel that it discussed the fall of the United States, okay? I didn't find it anywhere, so there's really not much need of me speculating on it any further. But I will talk just a little bit about prophecy that scholars feel that deal with the U.S., okay? And in Ezekiel chapter 38, let me turn back there, if I may. But in Ezekiel chapter 38, let me read verse 13. Sheba and Dedan and the merchants of Tarshish, with all the young lions thereof, shall say unto thee, art thou come to take a spoil? Hast thou gathered thy company to take prey, to carry away silver and gold, to take away cattle and goods, to make a great spoil? Now, what's happening here is Gog. Ezekiel tells us about Gog and Magog. Well, Gog points to the country of Russia, and the coalition of the world that joins Gog in their march against God's people. And the reason it's mentioned here is that the merchants of Tarshish is important because it refers to the colonies of Western Europe and the nations that have risen from them. Well, guess what? Where did we come from? where we come from. This would include North America and the United States. So I was thinking about this. When you think about how does the United States relate in prophecy, I was thinking what's our government's doing now with Russia. People don't hear much about it because the media don't want to talk about it. But we know our president did open up a pipeline where they could get oil and they could get gas. And he closed our pipeline, but he opened theirs. He helped them open it, okay? And I know that we have relations with them even today. So I'm telling you this for a reason, that in Ezekiel, it is told that even in the Western Europe and these countries in North America, that we will join forces, or they will join forces. I won't, because I'm a Christian. I'll never go against God's people. But the fact of the matter is that even America may find themselves fighting against God's people, invading Israel. And you say, well, that would be terrible, and you're right, that's terrible. But just a few references for you to look up that deals not specifically with the United States, but all nations. In Haggai chapter 2 and verse 6 and 7, it talks about how God brings all the nations together for this one purpose. In Isaiah 66, again, he talks about all nations, verses 18 and 20. And then in Zechariah 12 and verses 2 and 3, all nations gather together to come against God's people, or the nation of Israel. Okay? So, no, I didn't find in Daniel nowhere that it prophesied the fall of the United States. Okay? There's a good article, and I read this, and you may want to go online and read it yourself. It's this: "Is America in Bible Prophecy?" is the title of that article. It's written by Thomas D. Ice, I-C-E, Thomas D. Ice. He's a professor at Liberty University, and he has lots of good points and lots of information. So you might want to look that up and read it. Okay? I hope that helps you, but the only way I see we're involved in prophecy is how we relate to other nations. Okay? God bless you.